The National Electrical Code, or NEC, does not provide a specific definition for the term subject to damage. However, industry standards and interpretations generally consider a location to be subject to damage if it meets certain criteria. Firstly, it is likely to be exposed to physical forces that could cause harm to the electrical equipment. Secondly, it is vulnerable to accidental or intentional actions that could damage the equipment. When applying this to residential driveways, specifically concerning NEC 230.50, it is important to understand how an inspector might interpret the potential for damage to service conductors. The inspector cited NEC 230.50, which addresses running service conductors above a driveway or other areas where they are likely to be subject to damage. The inspector's interpretation is based on the potential for vehicles driving on the driveway to accidentally strike or damage the exposed service cable. While a residential driveway typically doesn't experience the same volume of heavy vehicle traffic as a commercial area, there is still a possibility for vehicles to cause damage to the cable, especially if it is not adequately protected. For example, a large truck or a vehicle with a high bed could potentially hook or snag the cable as it enters or exits the driveway. When evaluating whether a service installation is subject to damage, there are several factors to consider. 1. The visibility of the installation is important. 2. The height and exposure of the exposed conductors must be assessed. 3. The frequency and type of vehicle traffic in the area should be taken into account. 4. The likelihood of accidental or intentional damage needs to be evaluated. Based on the situation, where the meter base is mounted on the side of the house and the cable is only exposed for a short distance, it might be reasonable to argue that the exposed service cable is not particularly subject to damage in this residential application. The limited exposure reduces the chances of accidental or intentional damage. However, it is important to consider any additional factors that could increase the risk of damage. For example, if there is a sharp turn in the driveway or low-hanging branches nearby, it may be prudent to consider additional protection measures. These measures could include burying the cable or installing a guard over it. The goal is to minimize the risk of any potential damage to the service conductors.